What is up, everybody? MSD here, back with another video on Marvel Contest of Champions. Yes, you guessed it, this is finally the Red Goblin showcase video that I promised a while ago is finally here. Now, a few things to note before we get into the actual gameplay. This Captain Marvel fight is just a general look at what his rotation is supposed to look like, but just a few things to know beforehand. This Red Goblin was not Signature 200 in the recording of this video. This Red Goblin also did not have any significant synergies in the process of making this video. It was simply all Red Goblin. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at what's actually happening here. So you see I first throw my Special 1 to get an Energize. That helps me get to my Special 3 even faster. The Special 3 rotation with Red Goblin is by far the most effective in terms of damage output. Now, you saw I was doing heavy attacks while Captain Marvel was against the corner, and she was not getting her Special 3. That is Red Goblin's very, very powerful power control ability. The Energize, as long as he has one of them up, landing a heavy attack or knocking the opponent down with a Special 2, guarantees that they will be applied a power drain debuff. He is the only Cosmic Champion in the entire game to apply a power drain debuff to the opponent. It drains 10% of their power over a certain amount of seconds. I believe that to be 3 or 4, given that any of his Carnage Bomb debuffs have decreased duration on heavy attacks. So that's his unique power control right there. So there's just a decent showcase of it in and of itself. But now, as you can see, I charged heavy before the Special 3, and I used a medium before I threw my Special 2, and her health just incinerated, literally. Now I'm just trying to get to the Frenzy mode, and I am there. So now I throw a Special 1, and all I have to do is keep hammering into Captain Marvel, and eventually she will fall. I'll break down more and more of his rotation as the video goes on, but I just wanted to show a baseline, essentially, in Realm of Legends of what his rotation does look like in those higher health pool matchups, and what his damage output does, potentially yield. Alright, first boss here, we have Red Goblin versus the 7.1 Power Reserve Green Goblin. As you can see, I have 0 charges in my Bloodlust bank, therefore I will not be triggering Frenzy until Green Goblin is at 15% health. So this is going to be Red Goblin simply using his specials without the use of Frenzy, and you'll see that the damage even without Frenzy is still very, very nice. Now this is perhaps the longest of the videos I have to show today, just because, even without Frenzy, his damage is good, but Frenzy does help to speed things up quite significantly, just because duplication of buffs, which means duplication of debuffs, and duplication of debuffs means more damage. So Frenzy is very useful, but it is not essential for a Red Goblin, as you can see in this video. So this specific fight, there is no one single rotation that you need to specifically follow. As long as you have Energize and Fury up for most of the time, you will be fine. Managing his power as well, keeping him below 2 bars with the Energize is going to be very useful. As long as you're not playing too frantically, you should be fine. Being able to dex his Special 2 obviously will help tremendously in this fight, and if you can't dex it, as you can see there, I did take the first hit to the block. That was just an input reading issue. I can dex his Special 2 fine most of the time. There is no real issue with it, but Red Goblin does have very high block proficiency. That's something a lot of people don't know about Red Goblin. He has 70% block proficiency, which means adding Guardian to the team gives Red Goblin perfect block chance. I will say that once again. Red Goblin with the Guardian synergy, 5-star or above, grants Red Goblin perfect block chance. So every parry will be a perfect block, which is super sweet. It works for Cosmic Ghost Rider, works for Professor X. Any champion with above 70% base block proficiency, with the addition of a 5-star or above Guardian, can get a perfect parry. Not a perfect block chance, perfect parry. That's what I'm trying to say. So the fight's going pretty well. It's not the most ideal matchup for Red Goblin, but it is just a showcase of how, even without Frenzy, even in an even in an unideal matchup for Red Goblin, we can still dish out a fairly decent amount of damage in a relatively short amount of time. So, while he's not going to be everyone's best option for this fight, he can still work relatively well. The power control, the constant DOT, he has a lot of things going for him in this fight, where he might not be hitting on the raw damage department specifically, but in this fight, you know, the DOT is going to help, the power control is going to help. You're going to be inflicting some armor breaks if you have some aptitudes. Those will help as well. So yeah, he's okay for this fight, but this is a baseline showcase against the 7.1 boss on how Red Goblin does in an unideal matchup, unideal situation where he can't get to a special 3. How is he performing? And yes, the performance level will be lower because you can't get to the special 3, but being able to throw special 2s is going to allow him to deal at least a portion of the damage he could deal with Frenzy from a special 3. Now yes, I do have Frenzy now. That's the natural trigger for Frenzy. When he's at 0 charges, it's at 15%. I land a Stick Light Intercept there, I throw a special 2, and Green Goblin goes into the Shadow Realm. So let's move on to the next Red Goblin clip. Okay, next up we have the 6.4 Darkhawk boss. This is still a problematic boss for a lot of people, even though there are great counters to it like Magneto and Human Torch. People still have trouble with this boss just because of Darkhawk's power reserve, but we are going to use that power reserve against Darkhawk today in this video. So this is a fully ramped up Red Goblin, 5 Bloodlust. He does not need to be fully ramped up to do this fight, but it does help get into Frenzy quicker. Of course, it always helps to have 5 Bloodlust on Red Goblin, but none of them are really necessary because the special 3 is a guaranteed Frenzy trigger. So you'll see right here that I'm dexing the first and second part of Darkhawk Special 1 at times. You'll see I'll get clipped here eventually because I'm messing around with it, but yeah, right there, get clipped because I'm, you know, trying to show off the pizzazz a little bit, show off that you can dex his Special 1 in different sections. But again, that's irrelevant. We have gotten to the special 3, we just need Darkhawk to throw his special 2, so he has low power, so I don't push him to a special 3, because the trigger of power gain from the special 3 is not guaranteed. He does inflict 7 random Carnage Bomb debuffs on the special 3, and one of them could be Power Drain. Now if you do get Power Drain, and you're very fortunate, then you can push your opponent to a special 3 as much as you want, as long as they don't have any other alternative way of power gain, you're going to be completely fine. So there, we have pushed him to a special 2, we are in Frenzy, we have the Miss and Auto Block bypass, so he's completely bypassing all of Darkhawk's abilities in this fight. All I need him to do is throw a special 2, and the fight can really, really get going. So I'm just trying to play as passively as possible. There he goes, he throws a special 2. Again, I have the bypass of Miss, so it does not matter. All I need to do is make sure I double medium, throw a special 2 with the Fury, and Darkhawk starts to melt. Now, at this time, I did not have many points in Despair, but that doesn't matter because the damage that Red Goblin is dealing here is absolutely ridiculous. This guy is falling like no tomorrow. Despair wouldn't have even helped, actually, because this Darkhawk has Lionheart, so you can't reverse his regen even if you wanted to. But that just shows right there that Red Goblin can deal some massive burst damage. Again, no synergies on Red Goblin at all. That was specifically just Red Goblin by himself, bypassing Miss, bypassing Auto Block, and dealing some massive damage along with it. So I'm going to get to another special 2 here, and Darkhawk is going to be absolutely demolished. So let's move on to the third gameplay clip of Red Goblin. Here we have the 7.1 Weapon X boss. Now, I did have Carnage to help the ramp up of Red Goblin's Bloodlust. You see I do have 4, I don't have my max charge of 5, but again, Bloodlust does not really matter. As long as you can access your special 3, you will have access to Frenzy at all times. So, it's not going to be that big of a deal whether you have 1, whether you have 3, 5, again, it just does not really matter that much. So Red Goblin, again, not an ideal matchup for Weapon X, but he can work, and his damage output can be enough to bypass his regeneration. So again, all these clips, I had 1 point in Despair at the time of filming this. I only very recently got Despair maxed out, and boy, has it really changed my perception on champions like Human Torch against like Abyss Darkhawk, because oh my god, it's absolutely wild. But anyway, Red Goblin, just trying to get to a special 3, need to parry, charge heavy, and one thing about Red Goblin that a lot of people don't really realize is very similar to the way Civil Warrior triggers armor buffs on whiffed attacks. Red Goblin's symbiote buffs can be triggered on whiffed attacks as well. Whiffing a light, whiffing a medium, not activating or not landing a heavy attack, just charging it, all trigger the certain buff that you want to trigger from that action. So a whiffed medium will trigger a Fury, a whiffed light will trigger an Energize, a whiffed heavy, or I mean you can't really whiff of heavy, it's more of a heavy charge and not a heavy activation, that triggers an Aptitude. So all of that works for Red Goblin when triggering his buffs. We've already thrown a special 2 in this fight. He is down to roughly 60%. Again, his regen is very overpowering, especially with my lack of points in Despair. It's not helping, but it's not hurting as well because I do have constant damage over time effects and DOTs, somewhat mitigating his healing. So it's not like he's healing the full amount. All I have to do here, he did not go for light intercept there, so I had to hit a nice, I mean, it wasn't a parry, but it was just a block. Now I've thrown a special 2, really bad critical rate on that one, just super bad RNG, but it's fine because we're going to throw another special 2, and does a little better, 1 crit, but again, it's not all about the crits with Red Goblin, it's about all of the different sorts of numbers. The red numbers, the yellow numbers, and sometimes even the white numbers can deal a decent amount of damage, but as you can see, I have a lot of armor breaks on this Weapon X Wolverine, just helping my damage even further. Red Goblin's armor breaks are super useful for countering champions like Killmonger, Iron Man, Infinity War. Any champion with problematic armor ups, Red Goblin can absolutely shut down in a heartbeat as long as you have a Fury buff. So let's move on to the 4th gameplay clip of Red Goblin. Here's the 4th and final gameplay clip I have for you today. The 6.3 Mysterio boss. Again, this fight is still a big problem for a lot of people who don't have access to a champion like Magneto. So Red Goblin, he is actually pretty solid for this fight once you understand what you need to do. So with this Mysterio, as long as he's playing aggressive, you need to get to his special 3. That is the first thing you need to do. I do have 5 Frenzy in this fight, which is helping me quite significantly. You gain Frenzy by winning a fight with Red Goblin. But what you need to do here is essentially get to a special 3. That is your first goal. Dex special 1s, play very, very passive. You can even get the Falter for some healing, so you can take some health back from the chip damage from Mysterio just being Mysterio. I whiffed there, so he would not attack me. I whiffed again there. All very tactical plays, not kidding there, just making sure that I whiff in between his animations so he can't counter me when he's trying to go for, you know, a secondary hit, because when he's in between animations, he can't hit me. So now that I am at a special 3, all I need to do is hit a parry, go for a medium, and the reason I go for a medium is because I need to armor break Mysterio. Once I armor break Mysterio, this fight gets under control a lot faster. That is why I decided to go for medium instead of a heavy, because Aptitude will trigger Incinerate. It will not trigger armor break at all. The only buff that triggers armor break for Red Goblin is his Fury. So that is why I needed to trigger Fury. Now, one thing that's very, very cool about this fight and how it works with Red Goblin is once you reach a certain threshold of Frenzy, he will always be healing from the Falter from Tunnel Vision. So if you have him at 35, 45, 55, as long as you have the Frenzy active, you will be healing from Tunnel Vision constantly. So what I need to do here is, I missed the first one because my Frenzy ended, but I did end up hitting him for a second time. And now I just need to get back to a special 2 and make sure I enter Frenzy before I trigger Falter again, because I don't want to trigger Falter like I did right there, but be in a bad situation, so that's why I did push into special 2. Because if I would have pushed into special 1, it probably wouldn't have been as pretty. So now I just need him to throw 2 more special 1s from me, and then I can throw my special 2, enter Frenzy, and this fight is essentially over. It's under control, and there's nothing Mysterio can do at that point to stop Red Goblin from absolutely obliterating him. So I throw another heavy attack, he throws a special 1, and now I just need to wait out the damage reflect, and you'll see what happens in a minute here. I throw a medium, and my Falter triggers, and it misses, but luckily the special 2 was enough on the block to push him to the frenzy mode. So now the fight's completely under control, even with a whiffed special 2. I still push him into frenzy, and now Red Goblin is going to ruin this man's day. So now we just need to make sure that the charges from Mysterio are not gaining too rapidly, because if he gets a poison, he's not throwing specials, you are dead because you are not surviving that poison. So now I'm just building up power to a special 2, making sure I'm not hitting him with the reflect damage up. I'm going in for a combo. I only trigger 1 medium for the armor break and the incinerate, because the frenzy buff counts as an alternate buff. Aptitude and all other active buffs on Red Goblin trigger incinerate on knockdown and on special 2 activation, so that's definitely helping with the damage over time itself, and the armor breaks are preventing him from gaining any charges. Now, if this was pre-nerf Mysterio, Red Goblin could still technically work, as long as, again, you get to frenzy and you're controlling his power well, and he's throwing specials or special 1s or special 2s constantly. This can still work if it was pre-nerf Mysterio, but of course it's not, so why would we even mention it? But yeah, current Mysterio, Red Goblin absolutely obliterates this man. He heals from the falter as long as you have frenzy up. He's healing from pretty much every source of DOT that Mysterio is applying. And yeah, Red Goblin, look at that, 406 incinerate damage per tick, that's 812 per second, and it can only go up from there. And that's what I'm going to show you guys in the final clip of Red Goblin, so stay tuned. Okay, now the final clip of Red Goblin. I said the last one was the final clip, but it was technically it was correct, because it's the final boss solo, but this is the real final clip of Red Goblin gameplay I have for you. So if you notice at the very start, I had 3 distinct team members on this team with Red Goblin. I had Heimdall, I had Angela, and I had Magic. What this team does for Red Goblin is it allows him to gain 2 permanent buffs, Fury and Precision. The Fury on Heavy Knockdown triggers Armor Break, and the Precision on Heavy Knockdown triggers Incinerate, because every other buff, including Aptitude, every other buff that is not Fury or Energize, triggers Incinerate. So if you have buffs with Buff Cornucopia, all of those buffs will trigger Incinerate, and so on and so forth. It's really insane, and I am very excited for Odin for that crossfight of aptitudes, because that could technically mean that Red Goblin could deal 17, 19, as many incinerates as you need him to on a heavy attack, every single heavy attack knockdown. So I'm very excited for Odin to come to the game so I can see that synergy in action and I can test it myself. But the purpose of this specific gameplay clip with Red Goblin is to show that he has a very constant form of DPS. He doesn't have, in this specific rotation, it's not very flashy, but you can see that the damage over time is very, very high. Eventually it'll come to a point where it's dealing roughly 600 damage per tick, so 1200 damage per second, and that lasts for about 3 or 4 seconds, so you're dealing roughly 5,000 to 6,000 damage from incinerates per heavy attack, and that's pretty solid, to be completely honest. It's very viable in non-Abyss content. Of course, in Abyss it's going to shine because health pools are larger, so you're going to be able to see the full extent of its potential. But in other content, if you're able to run Red Goblin, easy access to Armor Break, easy access to Incinerate, he can handle Distract, he can handle Buffet with this team. I'm sorry, not Buffet, he can handle Distract, he can handle Buffed Up with this team, and he can deal a lot of damage. Very simple rotation, just parry heavy. Reparrying obviously helps, but it's not necessary for this rotation, but it's just a good tip to have for doing this properly and doing this without any hiccups. So yeah guys, that is the Red Goblin showcase video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There will be more Red Goblin content to come. Of course, you know I've already released some Red Goblin content on my channel, some variant solos and stuff like that. But I hope to make more Red Goblin content as more content comes out, and as more content where Red Goblin could be used comes to light. So thank you all so much for watching. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.